Hi guys, this is Katie. I'm recording this in a place that's usually pretty loud, although it's fairly quiet right now, so hopefully it will stay that way. But if the background noise gets bad, I apologize. So, this is my first homeless self-care / survival tools video, aside from the introduction, and I'm nervous about it, but hopefully this will be useful for people. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about sleeping and specifically finding a good place to sleep when you're on the street. There are so many factors to consider here, it's overwhelming, but we're going to focus specifically on what we do and what we found works best for us. So, we have found that now that we're over 18, when we were underage, things were different. But now that we're over 18, what works best for us is to sleep in shop fronts and to find 1 to 2 shop fronts that we feel most comfortable in, that we can kind of claim as our own. Some people like to sleep in all different places depending on where they are. I know some people are outright travelers and not looking to settle in any one area, but for people who are trying to be homeless in a city, in a single city, something to definitely consider is whether or not to find a spot that you consider to be your spot and then guard it as if it is yours, whether or not the law respects that it is. And I'm not saying people should take up fights with the cops about it. Rather, I'm talking about dealing with other homeless people. The way that we try to conduct ourselves is in a completely nonviolent manner. While we are willing to defend ourselves if attacked, we try not to go on the offensive, and we try not to get in people's faces and mess with them if they want to sleep in our spot. Rather, what we do is we make sure to get to our spot early enough that most people who might want to take it won't be there. And we just do this every single night. We get there super early as we can get away with without housed people having a problem. And so that basically just means sundown. And part of why we like having a place in a shop front is that there are 3 walls around us and a roof. Having a roof is invaluable, even though a lot of shop fronts aren't that protected from the rain. It's better than nothing. And having a tarp can be really, really helpful. That's something that we have. And if it rains, we can pull it over ourselves and all of our stuff. If need be, while we haven't had to do this yet where we're at, if need be, there are ways to like tape the tarp up to the sides of the front of the shop front so that it can block out even more rain and provide a little bit of privacy. It can be very difficult trying to build structures that provide privacy if there is a general climate of hostility towards you, in my experience. People can get really edgy, as in housed people and cops, if they see homeless people building what looks too much like an actual home. I've noticed that if I look too comfortable, people start trying to mess with me, and that has to do with classism, ableism, just general systemic oppression towards the homeless. So that's something that I have to be aware of. I just have to be mindful that while it's important that I make sure that I am as comfortable and safe as I can be, part of that means not looking too comfortable and not looking too safe, and it's a really delicate balance. I know a lot of people really want to hide and try to survive homelessness by being invisible. And while that can be a legitimate strategy depending on one's circumstances, personally, I've found that I am safer being somewhat out in the open. Because if I am truly hidden, then maybe nobody will mess with me. But if I am hidden and somebody does find me and try to mess with me and there's no one around, things can get really dangerous. That's something that I ran into when I was underage. Being underage and homeless was all about being hidden. And unfortunately, that made me incredibly vulnerable in ways that I just wish to never be vulnerable again. And of course, a huge part of it for us is that we're not homeless alone. We have a partner who is male, who is almost 15 years older than us, and who also knows how to navigate his way through homelessness, and that makes things a lot easier. If we were sleeping by ourselves, we probably would still seek out the same type of shelter, but we would have to take more precautions. So yeah, having the walls around us, having a bit of shelter from the rain, those are things that the shop fronts provide. And of course, it's important for us to make sure that we are in a shop front where the people who own the place either don't know or don't care that we're there. One thing that we've never paid too much attention to or have much issue with that our partner has brought to our attention is that a lot of shop fronts have no trespassing signs, but a lot of them are out of date. And if they are out of date, then he says, and I haven't researched this, but I'm assuming it's true, he says that we can point that out to cops if they try to roust us and point to the sign. And then unless the people who own the place get involved, there isn't that much that they can do. Definitely on the subject of cops, I find it very important to remember that cops have a lot of power, usually, to bend the laws and exert force that they're not really allowed to exert if they choose to. They also have the power to legally exert force that they often choose not to exert if they are not trying to personally target you with a vengeance, and if they just don't feel like it. And if you're not causing them too many problems and or they don't have some personal reason to target you, they will often let a lot of things slide if you're chill. And so even though we are an MK Ultra victim and we do deal with targeting from police and have had to deal with police exerting more force towards us than they normally would, because of that, we have found that generally speaking, if we are clean, if we aren't too loud, if we don't piss off the residents or the owners of the places where we sleep, the cops generally leave us alone. It's been very helpful for us to be aware of what the hours are for the sit-lie laws in our area. We've been told that they are from 11 p.m. 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. We're not legally allowed to sit or lie on the sidewalk and its general surrounding area during those times. And we found that the cops don't enforce it in the evening once the sun is down very much where we are. That's never been an issue for us, but they do enforce it in the morning. So as long as we're out of where we are by 7 a.m., we're okay. And even then, as long as we look like we're trying to get out of where we are, as long as we are up and moving and starting, putting things away, they usually don't bother us and we can kind of take our time. The other morning, a cop tried to get us up at 5:45, which they're not supposed to do. And our partner went and talked to them when we realized what time it was, and told them that we were going to be getting up, but that it was going to take us a minute and that we would be out of there by 7, but we might not be able to be out of there before then. And the cops apparently were sitting in their car playing games on their phones, desperate to not be bothered. So they went along with everything that Thomas said. And so I think that is one thing that I really want to communicate, is that cops are people. They may often be shitty people. They may often be profoundly dumb people and profoundly violent people. But they are people. And while they have all these rules and hierarchies they have to uphold, learning to work with them, if possible, can be very, very helpful. We never lose sight of who they are and what they stand for, but we do try to see them as not quite as fixed as they might want us to, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm trying to think of what else to say. One thing that we want to talk about is sensory issues. We're autistic, and we have a huge problem with light and noise. And so going somewhere where it's not too bright and not too loud is really important. I've noticed that oftentimes the places where we can get away with sleeping in shop fronts are places where things are more chaotic. And I know that in the last town that we were homeless in, the only place that we were able to sleep where we weren't at huge risk of getting rousted by the cops in the night was this downtown area where things were so chaotic and so violent. It felt like the cops only didn't roust us because they knew that we were going to get rousted all the time by drunk college kids being violent. And they basically seemed to think that the drunk college kids were going to do their jobs for them. And as long as those kids were oppressing us, they didn't feel the need to use their power to oppress us so directly. So that was not good. Where we are now, though, the street we sleep on is a lot quieter. There are routinely people who freak out. There are other homeless people who sleep nearby or who hang out nearby, who have psychotic episodes at times, and that can be difficult. But for the most part, housed people don't fuck with us, and the cops leave us alone at night. So that is a great thing. One thing about where we sleep is that it is very LGBT friendly. And with us being queer and trans, that's a huge plus. Because we are with a male partner and we're not trying to pass as male ourselves, we are often perceived as a straight couple, I'm sure, and so not as much subject to homophobic violence, but I myself am still often perceived as queer, and just being in an area that is friendly to that is great, even though there are a lot of well-off people there who aren't necessarily the friendliest towards the homeless. You know, there's still, I just don't have to worry about that kind of violence, really, all that much. I have only been outright assaulted one time in that area, and it was while I was busking just the other night on my birthday. Somebody who was not from the neighborhood, I don't believe, wandered into it looking psychotic on crack, and there was an incident. But other than that, I've been really quite safe. But I don't want to get off track here. I'm trying to talk about sleeping. So yeah, finding a place that's not too terrible with light and noise. I just addressed the noise thing. The light thing. So there are some really bright street lights near where we sleep. And unfortunately, the walls are very... sorry. Somebody walked by me who was in a uniform and it triggered me. But everything I think is all right. They just got way too close. People like to do that. They like to get too close. Anyways, yeah, the walls do not block out all the light around. They are clear. And so we take a trash bag that we folded up in half and a shopping bag, and we tape each to one in front of us and one to the side of us. We tape each to the walls, one in front of us and one to the side of us, and that helps block out some of the light. And we make sure that, you know, the tape we use does not leave marks, so we're not vandalizing the property or anything. One thing too is that the place we sleep is for a business that is closed, and that's usually the best in my experience. Trying to sleep in shop fronts for places that are out of business definitely is better in my experience than sleeping in a place where the people are in business, unless you're on good terms with the people who own the business. You actually know them and you have permission to sleep there, and that could be really cool, because then you might even be able to, if need be, use the law to protect your spot from other homeless people. And, well, I've never actually done this. I've just known people who've done this, and I personally hate the idea of using the police against other homeless people. That can be an option if you have permission from the business owner. Okay, I'm trying to think what else. Wind shelter. You know, having shelter from the wind can be a big one. We have a degree of shelter from the wind where we sleep. Our blankets will blow away, at least the very top one, if we don't hold it down with something. So we tuck our blankets underneath some of our stuff, and that makes a big difference in keeping us warm and keeping our stuff attached to us. I guess the very last thing I'll cover, I was saving this for last, is protecting your stuff. So a huge issue is getting robbed. As some of you know, have been following our posts on here, we've been robbed twice now since we've been homeless for the last couple months. One of those times was on my birthday, and I believe that was targeting. The other time very well may have been targeting, but the other time we were in a different part of town and having a rough time and decided to just bed down where we were, and we didn't have walls around us. We ended up oversleeping and just doing a bunch of stuff that's generally not wise. So otherwise, the only time we've been robbed where we sleep was, like I said, on my birthday. And while there were things that we could have done to keep ourselves safer, I think that was targeting. I don't think there was much that we could do. But one good thing to do we've learned is to keep our most valuable stuff on our body when we sleep. This can be really difficult for us because of our sensory issues and because we toss and turn. But without going into too much detail, making ourselves possibly vulnerable here to further stuff, we have found keeping stuff near us while we sleep that it would wake us up if someone were to try to take it. That's definitely the best thing. We found that tying stuff together can help, tying bags together, keeping bags near our head rather than near our feet can help, although sometimes there just isn't enough space. It can just be so challenging with our sensory issues, trying to keep our stuff safe. But yeah, keeping valuables on or cuddled up with your person is definitely a good idea, and not having too many valuables in general is probably a good idea. Most of the stuff that we care about that we had from inside is with a friend of our partner's in a box, not with us on the street. It's just, it can be so hard holding on to stuff. But yeah, having walls around us, keeping stuff close, and not oversleeping is huge. We've noticed that generally speaking, in all our experience of being homeless, we're more likely to get robbed early in the morning than in the middle of the night. And so the earlier we wake up, the more likely our stuff is still to be there.